Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. I'm very pleased to be sitting today with Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch, who was formerly the director of the military prosecution for Judea and Samaria, and therefore is able to provide deep insight into what is happening right now in Israel with the military advocate general. So, Maurice, thank you so much for joining me. We're a few weeks late on this issue, but it's still critical to discuss, and you've been so busy, I'm sure, sharing all of this in the media. It's good to be able to sit down and discuss this with you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back. It really is quite a thorny subject. With your permission, I'll just jump straight into the content for those that are unfamiliar. How does this whole thing start? How do we find ourselves in a position where a major general in the army, the head of the military advocate general, is now herself in prison and under investigation? So here are really I'll mark a few stages along the process. It starts obviously with an arrest of a terrorist in Gaza as part of the war following the massacre. He's brought to a detention center called State Iman. There they had a really a temporary center where they would bring the initial terrorists. They would undergo very quick investigations to predominantly gain information, intelligence about what's going on the ground, and then they would be moved on. One of those terrorists goes to see a doctor, and he makes a complaint that he has been assaulted by one or more of the soldiers. What happens then is an automatic referral of the incident to the military police, and an investigation is started. That then evolves into a much wider investigation of a number of soldiers. And then what I assume happens is that they have a discussion with the MAG, the military police with the MAG, and they say, listen, we have at least prima facie evidence and we need to do something about this. And so they decide, okay, we need to bring in the soldiers who are under suspicion for questioning. What the military police then decides alone is that they will go and arrest the soldiers in broad daylight. They will send their policemen in face masks so that they won't be recognized by anyone else, but they will and they will arrest the soldiers as if they are the worst of the Hamas terrorists on their base while they're doing their job. They're not running anywhere. This obviously caused tremendous uproar in Israeli society. It doesn't matter what the soldiers have done. Those who have committed an offense obviously need to be punished, but you don't treat soldiers that same way. They are not terrorists. And that then brings about a wave of criticism against the law enforcement in the army, against the military advocate general. At this point, the head of the unit, Major General Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, decides that she's going to do something for what she perceives as defending the law enforcement agencies in the army, instead of throwing the military police under the bus and saying, you know what, they're responsible for the disgusting manner in which the soldiers were arrested. You are absolutely right in your condemnation. She decides that she's going to go over the investigative material, and there she discovers a video which purports to be some type of a support for the claim of the terrorist, and she leaks that video to an Israeli journalist called Guy Peleg. And that night on Channel 12, Guy Peleg presents a very, very much edited version of the video, coupling one or two different parts together, or possibly even more than that, to show what he believes is an incriminating picture. But we're not sure exactly who edited the video, whether it was the MAG or whether it was the Guy Peleg. And to their great dismay, even though they obviously take what would probably be the most incriminating part of the video in order to show that they were doing the right thing, no one was convinced, because the video shows almost nothing in and of itself. And so that was a complete failure. There is then a request put into by one of the organizations that I'm involved in as well, the Choose Life Forum of the victims of terror. They put in a request to the Attorney General, please investigate who leaked the video. The Attorney General refuses to initiate an investigation, and so they submit a petition to Israel's Supreme Court. As part of that whole process, the court recommends, as the court so often does, to the state that it nonetheless conduct some type of an investigation, and the decision is made that they will appoint the deputy MAG to conduct an investigation to see who leaked the video. In the course of those discussions, the deputy MAG reports back saying, well, I've thoroughly investigated the situation and I found no culpable suspect. And that's really where it ended. They got away with this for a year until just before Sukkot, the spokesman of the MAG then decided or was going to be promoted to a judicial position. Once you go to a judicial position, you have to undergo a polygraph of the ISA to ensure that you haven't leaked secret information. And she apparently fell on that polygraph. And when they asked her, well, please explain what's going on, that's how the whole debacle was discovered. That message was then given straight by the head of the Shabak to the head of the army. He called in Yifat Tomer and said, I know that you're the one who leaked it. She apparently, reportedly, left his office white as a sheet, having been caught red-handed, and then immediately submitted her resignation, saying, I was the one who leaked the video, and I did it to support, obviously, the law enforcement agencies. She did not take any responsibility for the fact that she and others had lied to the chiefs of staff, the previous and the present one, about who leaked the video, or to the ministers of defense, or to the justice ministry, or to the courts. This was all one big, disgusting cover-up. The deputy MAG, so it would appear, was either entirely negligent in carrying out the investigation, or was party to the fact that his boss had been the one who leaked the video, and also was party to that cover-up. Once the investigation started, it turned out that there were another 8 to 10 senior officers in the MAG court, including the previous or the former chief military prosecutor, who all knew about the fact that it was the MAG who had leaked the video and had for a year covered this all up. This is leaking the evidence in and of itself is obviously very, very serious. That's not something that law enforcement agencies should do. But it was compounded by the fact that they all tried to lie and cover it up. And it was only discovered by accident. And that's really where we are. Those people who knew about the leak and who were party to lying to the courts, to everyone, are now under criminal investigation themselves. The MAG herself was under arrest for a few days, and until she was released to house arrest. She has reportedly possibly tried to commit some type of self-harm. Some people believe that it's just a show. I would be cautious with that interpretation. This is someone who was an excellent officer throughout her career. She was the first female MAG, and now going from that, a major general, only the second female major general in the IDF, and now going from that really tremendous pillar to really being the last of the criminals, is, I think, something which would be very emotional and life-changing for anyone. And so I wouldn't necessarily rule out so quickly an attempt at self-harm. So that's where we're standing now. It's all still under investigation. In the meantime, the Minister of Defense and the Chief of Staff have appointed a replacement for the MAG, Advocate Itai Ophir, uh, um, was appointed. He was a previous legal advisor to the Ministry of Defense, and he was meant to assume his new position in just over a week, and to be appointed as a major general. And so really, for the rest of the people involved, they're still pretty much up in the air. No one really knows exactly how that will end for them, to what part they were actively participating in the cover up, in the lies. That's something which needs to be thoroughly investigated. Major General Yerushalmi's mobile or cell phone was just recovered after it had mysteriously been lost on the beach by the sea, and now obviously the forensics are going through the phone to see what information there is on the phone and who else is potentially implicated in the cover up. The world, unfortunately, and his wife of the Israel haters jumped on the video that was presented and said this is evidence that Israeli soldiers abuse Palestinian terrorists. That's been all over the world. It did really unbelievable damage, and I believe irreparable damage to Israel's name, to the good name of the IDF soldiers. And that's something which was part of this whole farce, and which I think part of the reason why there was great reluctance to take responsibility. Not only did the leaking of the video fail domestically, but internationally it caused really tremendous damage. And then when you add onto this all of the dealings around it, it really is a terrible situation. This is the unit that I served in for 20 years, and I believe that what's going on now does not represent the unit. The IDF MAG is a very, very professional unit. It is a very, very essential unit for the IDF, giving legal advice, law enforcement, and this is something which is simply outrageous.
So I think you answered what I was about to ask you, but I just want to clarify that the unit of the military advocate has a wide range of responsibilities, including being involved in the legalities of operations during the wars. I'm curious if you think that this issue has kind of seeped into other areas wherein the military advocate had acted with bias or not acted within the interests of Israel, or as you're saying, no, this is a one-off, and really we can't draw conclusions to other types of decisions.
So I think we have to distinguish between two situations, Moshe. One is the criminal activity, which I believe does not represent the unit in any way, shape, or form. The other is the nature of the legal advice. On the nature of the legal advice, as I'm sure everybody knows, legal advice is very much a product of who you are, what you are, how you see the world, and what values you bring to the table. I personally had not a small amount of disagreements with the MAG and with some of the legal advice that was given to the IDF. For example, her what I believe shameful position that said that the IDF was prohibited from eliminating the terrorists who kidnapped and held captive and murdered, as it were, as it turns out, the Bibas family. I thought that decision was legally wrong, morally wrong, and lacked any of the real values that should have gone into that discussion. Similarly, I believe that her opinion on the requirement that the aid be provided to the Gazans almost in their homes, and that Israel couldn't go back into Gaza City unless it provided almost vault services for every terrorist and his neighbor, and to be a hindrance to the IDF forces was also fundamentally wrong. But then again, I believe that she wasn't doing it necessarily for Israel's detriment, but rather simply because she has a different legal outlook, which others do hold as well. Unfortunately, there is there is one cloud, and a very substantial cloud that has been running around as to whether the leaking of the video was part of a wider effort to stop the war, literally stop the war, because of U.S. legislation, the Leahy legislation, which says that if you have an army that is carrying out sexual abuse, then the US is prohibited from providing aid. So some people have suggested that the goal of the leak was actually to undermine the entire military operation in the Gaza Strip and to actually cause the US to sanction Israel. I find it hard to believe that that was the level of the sedition of the mag. I would be very shocked to hear that that actually is the case. And I think it would be good if that simply remained as a conspiracy theory and was never actually confirmed in any way, shape, or form, because that would literally not be just lying to the courts. That would potentially be treason.
I want to pause my conversation with Maurice for just a moment to share with all of the viewers out there a wonderful opportunity that's coming up in March. If you've watched these briefings for long enough, you know that of the many projects that we have at IDSF, one of them is a mechina, a pre-army program in the Gaza envelope in the community of Tekuma. We take students out of high school and we train them, we prepare them mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually for meaningful service in the military. Well, that program ends this season in February. And starting in March, we are opening up our campus to you. Tourists, visitors, volunteers from the US, from Canada, from Australia, from anywhere across the world who want to come to Israel, roll up your sleeves and have a very meaningful opportunity to learn, to grow, and to give back to Israel. Our campus is waiting for you. It's a tremendous opportunity to really experience Israel in a way that you usually would not. You're not just going to be hanging out in a hotel in Tel Aviv or Yerushalayim in Jerusalem, but you're really going to be with the people in the Gaza envelope, volunteering, helping rehabilitate the area while touring a little bit, learning, and really experiencing Israel at its finest. So it's a program we have in March. I encourage you to reach out, get more details, sign up, join us, be a part of everything that is happening here in Israel. With that, going back to my conversation with Maurice. So I've spoken with commanders in Gaza who have said that they, had the opportunity to take out terrorists or to engage in an operation, but kind of they were held back because of the legal guidance or requirements they were given. Do you think that's a good thing? Meaning, obviously, a commander in Gaza wants to proceed and wants to destroy the enemy. Do you think that there are certainly times where they should be held back like that? Or is the MAG being too cautious or kind of putting too many restrictions on these operations?
Well, so this is really a question of what does international law say? What do the laws of war say? And how does each side perceive them? When you have a situation of war, there is this requirement of proportionality. People misunderstand this term very often. They don't. They think, well, the terrorists only fired 100 missiles, so Israel can only respond with 100 missiles. That's not proportionality. That's fairy tale stories that have no connection to any type of law. What proportionality says is that when you attack a military target, you should ensure that the ancillary or incidental damage that's caused is not excessive in relation to the concrete military advantage that the military commander anticipates will be received from attacking that target. So when you have that type of situation, just to put it into context of your question, if you have one terrorist who's sitting surrounded by 300 children, then the equation of proportionality would possibly suggest that it isn't legitimate to attack that one terrorist and cause so much incidental damage. If, on the other hand, you have 50 terrorists and one child sitting alongside them, obviously that equation is very much different. For military commanders, and they are the ones, and I cannot stress this enough, it's not the lawyers sitting under the fluorescent lights who are meant to be making decisions, but the military commander in the area. He is meant to make the decision and weigh up the proportionality. Is the advantage that I anticipate will be received from this attack greater than the incidental damage that I know positively will be caused? Then he's got the green light to attack. This isn't a hindsight check that the military commander thought there were 3 people, but in actuality there were 50. That's irrelevant for the laws of war. This is what did the military commander know when he carried out the attack. And so the MAG should not be directing or putting on more shackles than international law itself says, and each commander in the field should be making those decisions. And unfortunately, all too often we do hear this criticism. I'm somewhat skeptical about the criticism, whether it's not just more of an excuse than anything else, because certainly the commanders are given instruction in international law. They are given even advanced courses in the laws of war, and they should know these things for themselves and not then blame the lawyers sitting in air-conditioned rooms, and really do what they need to do within the framework of what they understand and know to be international law.
And are you able to comment on the relationship between this unit and the leadership of the IDF, be it the chief of staff or the minister of the defense minister? How much influence does the top brass of the IDF have in shaping who takes these positions and what types of policies or issues they enforce and push?
Well, so until now, the MAG has been predominantly reflective of what happens in the rest of Israeli society. One MAG prepares the next MAG. They're all very much similar in their nature, in their characteristics, and there really haven't been any major shakeups for the last, I don't know, 50 years. This unfortunate situation did provide an opportunity for a major shakeup, and different people were suggested as potential candidates to make that shakeup, including myself, as Channel 14 reported. One of the names given to the Minister of Defense by Prime Minister Netanyahu as a potential candidate was myself. And so because of my criticism, because of my different approach, because I don't really accept what is the hegemony of and the homogenous outlook of much of the legal world in Israel. But in the end, someone else was chosen, and we hope that that the chief of staff, the Minister of Defense, knows the candidate, knows the new MAG well enough to rely on him, that he will make the changes that are necessary, and really will first and foremost work to regain the trust of the army, of the public, and of the legal system, because this has been a terrible blow on all 3 of those fronts. And the first thing that the new MAG really has to do is to regain the trust of the army, that the intelligence corps can trust the MAG and that when they give them secret information, that information won't be leaked to the public.
Maurice, I really appreciate your time. We have a few minutes left. If we can switch topics and hear your reaction to the UN Security Council's vote on the Gaza plan.
So there we have the vote last night. It's the UN Security Council adopting the Trump plan, and here's the good and the bad sides in 2.5 minutes. The good side is that the resolution says that they're now working to provide a pathway to a Palestinian state, which means, in simple English, there isn't a Palestinian state in existence. We know that to be true. But when you have the Brits and the Canadians and the Australians and the French all recognizing the fictitious state of Palestine, and the UN saying, well, there's a state of Palestine that can join, for example, the International Criminal Court and then persecute Israel, I think the resolution is quite clear in saying there is not a state of Palestine, and that is something which is positive. But unfortunately, that's one of the few positive elements that exist. We're talking about the resolution implementing the idea of putting in or putting together an international peacekeeping force. That's not what Gaza needs. What Gaza needs is an aggressive military organization, whether it be international or just Israeli or just American, who will go about the very necessary job of disarming and dismantling Hamas. The peace-keeping organization, if their sole job is to restrict Israel from moving forward with that goal, then it will be a terrible disaster. This won't be the last war, but it will just be really creating the ground for the next war, the next cycle of violence, and that will be a terrible disaster. But that appears to be much of the question since the plan was launched already 2 months ago, month and a half ago. Who exactly is going to be responsible for dismantling Hamas? Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very clear. If the international coalition doesn't do it, then Israel will do it. I fear that this resolution will be somewhat of a shackle on Israel, and so we have not a small amount to be cautious of in the resolution.
Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Hirsch, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for having me.